Hello everybody, Max from Woodsman's Finest here. Welcome to another episode in my Grip to Tip series. Today we're gonna be taking a closer look at this very interesting small or short ILF rig by VPA, and I'm pretty excited to show you more. Stay tuned. Hey folks, Max from Woodsman's Finest here. Thanks again for tuning in for today's Grip to Tip episode in my Modern Trad series. I'm pretty glazed today. I can't even tell you how humid it is in the last, week. Sometimes it's just blazingly hot and humid, and today it's kind of hot and humid. So that's the two choices we have. As you see on the forest floor here, huge amount of destruction. We had the biggest hailstorm I've ever encountered in my life yesterday, about 1.5 inches diameter. Many cars in the area destroyed, and so has some people's greenhouses, etc., etc. So it has been a crazy spring, going directly from winter into crazy summer. So not too much rambling. What are we looking at today? I wanted to go ahead in the chronological order, so to say, how I picked up the bows after my hiatus. Shot for about 10 years, loved archery, all that, 15 years probably, and then just got out of it because I got so frustrated about many things, about my shooting, etc., etc. And so with the push, 2016, 2017, I got back into it, and I went on a little bit of a bow buying spree. Now, the first ILF rig that I ever bought after being really intrigued by it was this very bow here. What are we talking about today? This is a Vapor Riser by VPA, Vantage Point Archery, made in the USA. It came with these limbs. They're also branded by VPA, but as far as I know, they're made by Sky Archery, Jim Belcher, possibly one of the most iconic bow builders in the US alive today. And so it's a very interesting combo. Now, before I want to get into any of the other stuff, I bought this bow in 2017, used. I think it was probably from Leatherwall as well, bow site. I have no affiliation to the company, neither VPA nor Sky. So we're just gonna go over the specs, and then we're gonna go right into the grip to tip. And with every step along the way, I would like to share my point of view on these kind of things. I just wanna really emphasize on that it's my point of view, but I'm trying to back my opinions with experience and reasoning. So I think there's quite a lot of interesting and good features in this bow, and there's a couple things I don't like too much about it. The last thing I want this series to be is another channel where someone is just holding up a product into the lens, saying how great it is and how good it looks and how much it shoots, where it points, because none of that is actually information that is valuable to me. So let's get right into it and talk about the specs for a second. This is a 13-inch aluminum riser. We've got long longbow ILF limbs. ILF standing, as you probably know by now, for International Limb Fitting. It's a system that was originally designed for Olympic archery to make more different materials compatible to each other. Now, these are long limbs on a 13-inch riser, which means we've got a 58-inch bow overall. Now, these limbs are marked on this riser. Usually ILF limbs are very often marked on a 25-inch riser, which is an important detail, but these were made for this bow, as I understand. So they are marked 45 pounds at 28 inches on this riser. I measured them at my draw, which is 27 inches, and I get right to 42 pounds, which means that they probably hit weight pretty much spot on at 28 inches. Now, I've got very quickly the other stuff that is on here. All of these brands I've been working with for a long time. I chose them out of a lot of different brands that I've tried, and this is what I've stuck with. This is JS Custom Strings. This is a Spectra 652 string, 18 strands as far as I understand. I think it's 14 actually, sorry. Out of Australia. I have his strings on all of my bows for a good reason. I'm running just some cat whiskers on here, mounted at 1/4 of the length of the string, which is a measurement that has worked for me very well. Now, without getting ahead of myself, this is a Eagle Flight quiver that I always mount on pretty much all of my bows. I have different ones. I like the Eagle Flight. It's very quick on off. It doesn't destroy the balance of the bow too much. It's very compact and I've used it. This one here is I think 10 or 11 years old. So that much for the specs of the bow. I'm running it at 8 inches of brace height. I have tuned around with this bow a lot, as I find to be kind of necessary. It's not the easiest bow to tune because it's rather short and a little bit different from a lot of ILF risers. Another thing I want to mention right away before there's any comments about this, there was definitely some type of issue in the past because this riser by VPA and the Morrison 13-inch riser look very much similar. I have no idea what the actual politics were, and I'm not gonna talk about it at all because I'm feeling like I'm not in no position to have an opinion about what actually went down. And I think, as far as I know, everything has been solved and everybody's on good terms now. And I never really want to talk about these things anyways. So, all right. Let's bring this thing in close and run, as always, from grip to tip. Now, as you can tell, this is a black anodized, as far as I know, riser. The anodizing of this riser, in my opinion, is great. It is very durable. I'm definitely not babying the things I'm using, and this one is very good. Of course, there's a couple of spots where it comes off a little bit, but if you would know how I deal or how I treat my stuff, then you would be probably amazed at how it looks right now. Now, just let's go through a couple of the things it has. We do have bushings or threaded holes for a quiver. In this case, I would say you can of course as well put a sight on here. The sight window of this bow is not the biggest, of course. I would say it's about 3.5 inches, something like that, which is understandable because the overall bow is 13, or the overall riser length is 13 inches, which is about the shortest I've ever seen. And they're hard to come by, risers in this length, but they have a specific place that I'm gonna be talking about. Now, other than that, what is really interesting about this riser is that it does have something like a triangular shaped shelf. So right off the bat, you're basically getting something like a small resting area for your arrow. As I am running it right now, and it is kind of made to be run is with a bolt or a plunger that is very low down. So you can actually run this with a plunger as far as I'm understanding, but I've been running it with a bolt like that successfully. Very easy to tune, center shot. Now, what else about it? We've got no stabilizer hole anywhere. So on a bow like this, 58 inches, I'm not saying that it's necessary. I always do like the option to have this. I understand you could basically run a bow fishing reel, I think, out of these two threaded holes, but I still like having usually something, but there's not really a space or place to put that, so I really understand that they didn't put it in. Now, it comes with a Jaeger grip. This one is a medium height. Jaeger grips are not my favorite. You also see that there's one screw missing. The reason for that is that I actually want to show you this bow without the grip on, because I think this is probably my favorite bow of all times to run just off the riser. So let's just take that grip off for a second and see what it looks like. So with just the one screw out, we took the grip off, and you can see actually I used to run it with a little bit of padding here and with some tennis racket tape. Now, why do I think that is so great? In general, this riser has a pretty extreme deflex. Deflex is measured by going between the two dovetail detents, or like the pockets, and then taking a straight line and then measure to the deepest part of the grip. Now, already with the grip on, it has a lot of deflex, but there's even more deflex when the grip is off, which, especially with a short bow like this, can be quite nice, because short bows usually act a little bit more nervously, in my opinion, because the tip-to-tip axis is not as long. Now, what they did really well with this is whenever I run other bows without a grip to get a couple more millimeters of deflex out of it, deflex of course helping with keeping the shot torque free, or at least reducing the torque. My problem is that a lot of manufacturers leaving a lot of material out here on the outside of the grip, which means if I'm trying to run a 45-degree angle on my grip, there's a lot of material here that kind of squeezes my hand underneath. So anything extra here. But VPA, they actually reduced this material here by a lot. So it's not coming further out, which means that I'm very comfortably able to run my hand very high up. Another thing that they did was really shaping and rounding the handle here for the thumb, in my opinion. So the entire setup of this riser without a grip is extremely comfortable, and you can ride very high. Now, there is pros and cons to deflex. Deflex, of course, reduces the possibility to torque your bow, but it also means that in combination with the angle of the limb pockets, you might lose a little bit of performance. Now, in the future, we're going to talk about the Border Tempest, which I also have, which is probably the most engineered riser that is out there on the market today. And what they did is they put a lot of deflex in the riser, but at the same time, the angles of the pockets are rather straight up and down, which means you still get a lot of performance out of bow, comparable to a certain degree with the idea of a Black Widow. So the Black Widow, of course, has the limbs mounted on the back of the riser, or the belly rather, and they're basically straight up and down, but then the handle, the grip area, the riser, comes very much forward of the limbs, giving you a lot of deflex, but at the same time with these straight up and down limbs, it gives you a lot of performance. Now, I know this is a lot of techie stuff, but we're always talking about why a bow shoots, why it doesn't shoot, why it points well, why it does this, and I feel like there's no information in that. It's just a personal opinion. I'm just trying to share my opinion why things like that are and why they aren't. So going a little bit further out on this riser, we find these limb pockets that are, in the case of the VPA, very much angled backwards at a 20-degree angle. Even when the limb bolts are all the way in, this means that this bow has not a lot of pre-tension on the limbs, if you will. I've shot this bow with a lot of different limbs, and what I find is that usually ILF risers pick up a pound of draw weight with every inch that the riser becomes shorter. So from measured on a 25, if you're making it a 19, like a hunting riser 19 classic, you're adding usually 6 pounds. You're making a 17, another very popular hunting riser length, you're adding 8 pounds. Now on this 13 one here, you would have to add 12 pounds down from a 25-inch riser, you know, going by the rule. But it's not the case. It's more like 6 or 7. And I've tried this with a lot of different limbs. The reason being a short bow like this, they wanted to make a lot of deflex basically and very relaxed limb pad angles, so you're not getting any stacking out at 28, 29 inches. And while they have achieved that, I think the bow in general loses a little bit performance. It wants to be run with a rather high brace height. I mean, this is 8 inches on a 56-inch bow. Anything lower than that, the bow becomes rather loud. And I've tried this with 5 different pairs of recurve limbs and 3 different pairs of ILF longbow limbs, and the results are always kind of the same. It wants to be run on a higher brace height to be quiet, but then it loses some performance and it gets a little bit stacky back there. That being said, I think that there is a happy medium where you can shoot this bow extremely well. It's always depending on what you want to do with it. So without getting ahead of myself, let's just talk quickly about the components. What they have done was very different, is that there's regular 5/16 bolts in here that you would find on a bolt down recurve, but then they going into a metal bushing that is sunk into the riser. And then it is actually held in place, rather than with a set screw from the back, it is held in place with a little set screw from the side. I'm not sure that this is my favorite solution for that. My favorite solution is actually the same size of Allen key from the bolt, and then with a set screw from the back. So I don't have to fiddle around with 5 different Allen keys whenever I want to set something up on a bow. Unfortunately, hardly anybody does that. The only one that I've come across so far that has been doing this, I think, is Border with the Tempest, and my favorite riser of all time so far, the WF-19 by CD Archery. And that's the funnest thing, because you just have this Allen key, you loosen it, you do something with your tiller bolt, you tighten it. There is no going around with 15 different Allen keys just in order to set something up. That being said, they are at least consistent between that set screw of the tiller bolt and the set screws of the lateral limb adjustment. Now all of the components in here are stainless steel and they're sunk into the aluminum, and I am pretty happy with them so far. But I think there could have been a better solution on that part, because I think that it's an industry standard to have a good set screw from the back, and it is by far the most bomb-proof thing you can do. That being a hunting riser, I would have liked to see that. Now the limbs. And I probably forgot something about the riser, but so far so good. The limbs are made, like I said, by Sky Archery for VPA. They're also made in the USA. They're made and designed by the icon that is Jim Belcher. And I think, as far as I know, these might have been some of the first ever designed ILF longbow limbs. So the design is very different from what is available today by Centaur or by Dryad or by Das. They're actually pretty wide. They're every bit as wide here as a recurve limb, and then they have a very extreme taper to the tips. That means there is no real vibration in them, as far as I understand. The laminations, as far as I understand, this is black glass on the back and on the belly, and the laminations are actually in maple. The quality is very good, as you would expect. Nothing fancy about them, but everything that is done very well. The tip overlays look like they might be phenolic, micarta, whatever it is, and then there is actually a black layer in between the two core laminations, and I don't think that is carbon. I personally think it's stabby core. Despite being that wide, the lateral stability of these limbs is insane. They are rock solid. With all of my might, I can't turn them, which makes them a very stable limb, I think. Now, these are only pulling 42 pounds at my draw weight, so I'm shooting them with arrows that are kind of comparable to that. I don't want to shoot them with like super crazy heavy hunting arrows and then go like, well, the performance is not so good. But I rather know what the arrow weight is to know what performance I feel like I'm getting out of the bow. Now I chose, of course, axis diameter arrows is my favorite compromise. Sorry, sometimes I just have a brain hiccup. My favorite compromise. I'm shooting them, of course, with top-head components, with a collar and a hit insert. That's just the most affordable way, I feel like, getting a bomb-proof and very precise tip setup. Been shooting top-head for 15 years, and despite trying other stuff out, I've never seen a reason why I would ever change. On the back, I'm running wild fletching, natural turkey feathers, water repellent, all the good stuff. I've been talking about these a lot for a good reason. I've chosen them after shooting about a year with trad vanes. I've chosen them now over trad vanes for several reasons. If you want to find out why, ask me. I've got good reasons why, but it's not that I do not like trad vanes at all. It's just that these are a better fit for what I want to do. And so yeah. Now, I don't have any financial affiliations with any of these companies. I am very grateful and happy though that I get to work with them. I shoot pictures for them, I'm testing, etc, etc. I'm very grateful that I can, because in this case it's not something where I'm trying to make money with. I'm just grateful that I get to shoot this amazing stuff, because I have a choice of anything on the market for me basically to use and buy and shoot, and if I had a choice I wouldn't take any other products. So this is why I'm using them, and this is why I'm sharing about it. As simple as that. These arrows are 444 grains, give or take. Let's call it 440. So that means that I'm shooting about 10.5 grains per pound on the bow. And I have to say that the performance is very solid. It's not gonna win any speed contests, which I'm really not about, but I have a nice and flat trajectory. I feel like the bow is very quiet when set up right. It's easy to get quiet, but it is not as easy to tune as a lot of bows that I've had in the past. I think what this bow is really struggling with a little bit is, or not struggling, it's the wrong way of saying it. I think you gotta know what the purpose of your bow is before getting something like that. Usually when it's a short bow, you would say, oh, that's great for someone with a little bit of shorter draw. Not really, because of the relaxed limb pad angles in this particular bow. It means that you're only getting really to some type of performance once you're drawing it back to your 27, 28. Because before that there's hardly any tension really in the limbs, not hardly any, but there's a lot less. So this bow is really made for someone with a 27, 28, 28.5 inch bow. If you're going out with the limb bolts a little bit, you're probably gonna get hardly any stack with the right limbs, etc., until 29. But this is not a bow, in my opinion, for someone with a 30-inch draw. Now this bow here is definitely something that has its place. What I mean by that is it is a very specifically designed bow, in my opinion, for hunting in an environment where you don't have a lot of space. Maybe it's a tree stand, maybe it's some type of ground blind. It is extremely nimble. It is very easy to maneuver in the bush. Is this a bow that I really like shooting with my aiming style? Holding a long time in a competition here in Austria out to 40-45 meters? Not necessarily, but that is also me putting it, in my opinion, in the wrong purpose, in the wrong function. I think that this bow is excelling at being very maneuverable and very practical at hunting ranges between, I don't know, 10 to 20 meters, something like that. That's where it is fine. This is where it comes in handy. This is where it really points well. I mean, the design of this bow is something about 4,000 years old, because the reason I also got it in the beginning is that this is basically exactly what the Egyptian pyramid or angular bow looked like. If you don't know about the Egyptian angular bow, look it up and you know exactly what I mean. It was an extremely short composite bow, very reflex deflex, basically in a strung up position. It was basically a triangle, just like that, with a lot of deflex, with very much relaxed wedges or limb pad angles coming out of the riser, which it didn't have, of course, but you know, the idea was there. So in that regard, it is meant to be shot, I feel like, at a shorter distance. Now, me shooting with an aiming system, it's different from someone who is literally pointing and shooting instinctively. I think this is a great bow for that, because especially also without the grip, it has such a handle forward grip position, such a deflex grip position, that I very much get how you would be able to point it and shoot it very instinctively with the pointing. Now folks, I probably forgot to say a couple things that I really wanted to say, and this video is again much longer than I wanted it to be, but I feel like this grip to tip series is supposed to really go over these bows that I have in my current collection, also before some of them will go back out on the market and find new owners that maybe use them more than I do. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to show you this bow here, because it's something rather special. I feel like it has a special purpose. I do think that it is a great solution for this particular purpose or challenge. There's a few things about it that I would definitely change. Comparing it to bows of all type of other making different risers is difficult in my opinion, because it is so short. It has a very extreme deflex. It has very relaxed limb pad angles, but I think with the right limbs, with the right draw weight, anything out to 28.5, maybe 29 inches, if you choose light limbs that really, you know, draw well out there, this could be a great hunting bow. Very solid paint, comes in several different paints, and I think it's a good solution for that, especially if you try to use ILF rigs with maybe having 1 or 2 pairs of limbs and having several risers, and the limbs will behave differently on every riser. So thank you very much for watching. Check me out please on woodsmansfinest.com, on Instagram as well, with all of my wood carving stuff, my tools, etc, etc. Let me know what you think about these videos. Let me know what you would change. Trying to keep it honest, keep it straightforward, not too much this is great, buy this, buy that. Maybe a little bit of food for thought, watching a couple of arrows fly, and having something to watch on those rainy days maybe when you would love to be on the range but you can't. Right folks, thanks a bunch. I'm gonna catch you next time. Cheers.